Hi, I'm Cole Dinkler, and this is my project on the 70s. I've learned a lot more about the 70s since I've started this project, but I mostly focused on three major themes. There was a lot of false advertisement trying to sell different toys back in the 70s. Musicians usually expressed themselves with what they wore up on stage, and they became big trendsetters during the 70s. And the 70s was a very experimental time to be making music.
How many toys back in the 70s did you have that were false advertised?
The one that sticks out in my brain the most was probably the Weebles. So they were this little family, and there was a commercial, Weebles wobble, but they don't fall down. I think every kid from the 70s will remember that commercial forever. And they advertised this tree house, and it looked super fun. You know, it had the little thing that went up and down, and the whole family you could do all the stuff with, and it looked huge when it was on TV. And then I don't even remember how you ordered it back then because there wasn't any online ordering, but it was something that I really wanted, showed up, and it was about this big. You had to lay down to play with it, but it was advertised much bigger than it actually was.
What other toys were really disappointing?
One toy that everyone was convinced that they needed to have, wasn't even really a toy, was a pet rock. It was marketed very well. It came in a box with air holes, like it was alive, and it said Pet Rock on the bottom, and it was literally just a rock with some googly eyes. And I believe they advertised it that each one was chosen specially for you or something, that we were convinced that we needed to have that. And I think every one of my friends did. The other thing was the Slinky, which has been around forever, but they were really popular in the 70s again with the advertising, and they showed this great Slinky coming down the stairs alone or in pairs, and it worked great. Every kid that used it on TV, theirs worked great. I tried a Slinky on every set of stairs that I or any of my friends had, and none of them worked as well as they did on TV.
What toys from the 70s were extremely out there? They were just insane.
I guess the funniest one would be the Sea Monkeys. So it was advertised on the back of comic books, and it showed this picture of very lifelike looking sea monkeys, and they had a family with the king had a crown, and it said on there something about that you could train these sea monkeys, and they could be your pets. And I didn't order them myself, but a friend of mine did, and we were so excited because she got this package in the mail, and we went and we got it, and we followed the instructions. Of course, nothing happened. I learned later that it's actually brine shrimp, and so that was pretty disappointing. It didn't turn out anything like the advertisement said it was going to.
Another example I found was the Frontier Cabin. What was shown on the back of the comic book was definitely not what you got. What was depicted was a little log cabin that said it was big enough for 2 to 3 kids. But what you actually got was a folded up 9x14 piece of plastic that had the design of the Frontier Cabin printed on it. And it only took shape when draped over a card table or other pieces of furniture. It was also impossible to spend much time huddled inside of it due to the plasticky vinyl fumes. But I didn't just learn about the toys in the 70s. I also researched about the clothing that the musicians wore back in the 70s as well.
Clothing or like costumes did you wear when you went on tour?
Whatever fit. I would go and wear whatever felt comfortable.
So how do you think that changed from the 70s till now?
There has been a change within over the years. and but basically most of the clothing has stayed the same. Like I could get a guy from back in the days when I was playing and playing now, and there's very little change.
Yeah.
It was still, yeah.
Okay. How do you think clothing showed what the band was really like trying to show? Like the Ramones, they wore really raggedy clothes, and then Freddie Mercury wore really really out there clothing.
It went from, well, the hippie ages, the hippie stages went from very loose clothing. When you're on acid and on LSD, drugs and stuff, which a lot of the bands were on, they wanted to feel comfortable, so they wore loose clothing. And some wore, a lot of people wore t-shirts and jeans, but they still wear them today. And so there hasn't been, but then you can get off on glamour rock and big hair bands like Queen and Alice Cooper, the New York Dolls, and there's a long host of other bands that would throw on extra jewelry, and they would go into the rhinestones, scarves, and things hanging off their belt. And now it's like tattoos showing arms length of a variety, a collage of tattoos, and but overall, jeans and t-shirts are acceptable acceptable back then and are acceptable now. And if you see bands now, you see that they're just about wearing the same things. So that not that much has changed in clothing. There've been several styles, but for singers and so on, you see watch the Rolling Stones, that they've progressed over the years. They really haven't changed all that much in their style of stage gear and what they wear.
How much did what you wore on stage really matter about what you actually sang about in your actual performance?
They played, well, in case of John Kay and Steppenwolf, he was our lead singer. He wanted everyone to wear biker clothes, like with chains, belts, whips and chains, and leather vests, and it was more like the Levi Jet Set type of format with, well, we had the Born to Be Wild, so we had a lot of biker fans, so we dressed to just kind of blend in with what the bikers were all about.
This is my other mentor, Sam Bole, and he thinks that what people wore up on stage has changed a lot over the years, contradicting what my other mentor, Nick, has said.
It's funny because now, like, a lot of what people were wearing, like, they were being very flamboyant, colorful, big bell bottoms and huge platform shoes and stuff. And now it's kind of like people do that. It's kind of a joke, and they're dressing up and like, oh, look at that, this is fun.
Yeah.
But back then it was like, they were a little more serious about that. That was what you wore on stage,
Another aspect of my project was music in the 70s era, which my mentor Nick will talk about in the next clip.
New phases like disco or different stuff like that.
Well, disco came, people got, when generations form, the new ones roll in, the old ones kind of, some hang out and some quit and aren't around, but there's always waves of new players coming in, and they did so in the 80s. They had a whole list of bands that would come in, and they would use pre-recorded drum beats and then to sync in with what they were doing, and everything was like which that kind of the disco led to hip hop, and then hip hop led to well, you have reggae music coming out off the Caribbean, and it intertwined with some of the music that we played on the mainland, but it was all like an exchange of musical ideas back and forth, some to lean more towards the island music, and the island music of course incorporated all of the new settings, the electronics and so on of pre-recorded sounds, music, drum beats.
This project was so much fun, and I really liked that I could choose what I made my project around. I would also really like to thank the board members for donating their time to seeing what I have made for my 8th grade PhD project.